What lies beneath your feet? Sacred grounds, watered with tears of blood. Shall we begin? Shall we begin? Shall we begin?
Thank you very much to everybody who is here, who's going to show up in a little bit. Appreciate you. Please smash that like, share out the link. Today I have a wonderful guest, someone that I've known for many years, a good friend of mine. And as I began realizing that I had been through a narcissistic abuse and abusive relationship and started talking about these things, I had certain friends that came to me that had been through similar experiences or had dealt with narcissists before. And some of them were people that I've known for years. My guest today is Wes Moody. He is a son of narcissistic parents. He wants to talk about that today, talk about his channel. Please subscribe. There's a link to his channel in the description, in the chat. I'm also going to be sharing out a link to his GoFundMe. He's putting together a project. He's an independent creator. And that is what we do around these parts. We support our independent creators. So I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. And I am now going to introduce the man of the hour. Please, everybody, say hello to Wes Moody of WhateverCast.
Well, thanks for that awesome introduction. It's great to be here on the Ladonis Dragonstorm channel. And I love the stuff that you're doing with narcissistic abuse. And actually, I'd been on just some background. I do have narcissistic parents, both mom and dad. They were very young. They were 18 and 19 when they got married and had my brother, and 20 and 21 when they had me. So already have two very young, attractive people. So that's already a recipe for narcissism as it is. You know, there are other interesting things involved there too. I mean, both of them had, you know, alcoholic fathers. Mom and dad both did. And so I think that kind of, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And being that age and having had alcoholic parents themselves, I think that accounts for a lot of that. But yes, we're going to talk a little bit about my experience with that, my healing journey, and how Steven's helped me, and how you know, we can all help each other and learn from each other and grow and thrive.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, we were talking backstage, and I was coming through your channel, WhateverCast, and great live streams. For me, it's late at night. You know, you're on the West Coast, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were mentioning a term, gray rocking. Yes. Because of everything that I had been through, I was still going through my healing journey. You know, I still am to a degree, but I was very angry at the abuse that I had gone through, and I didn't consider, you know, gray rocking an option. You know, it was, you know, get that narcissist back, expose them. You know, truth is the bane of all liars. Go get them. And listening to your show, and you talking about having to gray rock your, you know, narcissists, it brought me around. Like, it really, hearing it, not only just hearing it from a friend, but hearing it from a fellow survivor, and understanding that, yes, because if you attack a narc, if you go after them, you're feeding them negative fuel. You're feeding them what they want, no matter what, and that is unhealthy for you. And you're still traumatized. You're still coming from a place of emotional reactivity when you do that. I mean, how was gray rocking? I mean, real quick, just like, how has gray rocking helped you in dealing with your family situation, your family dynamic?
Well, so yeah, just a little bit more background. So yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I do have an older brother who's 2 years older than I am, and we have very different personalities. And you know, I was more quiet and reserved, and he was more boisterous and emotional. And you know, part of this, it's really weird, and I think I've mentioned this to you in the past, but it's almost like the house was divided into two camps. Like, I was mom's son, and he was dad's son. It's kind of like how it was.
So you were both golden children, like, to the other parent?
Well, yeah, basically. Okay. When they were married, and when they got divorced, and we both lived with mom, my older brother didn't take that so well and took a lot of that out on me. So, yeah, there'd just be like relentless teasing, I mean, really mean-spirited stuff. Like, I mean, I can laugh about it now, but I'll give you an example. The movie The Jerk, right, with Steve Martin.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't find out that I even had bad eyesight until I was like in the 4th grade, and look at this prescription. So already, you know, there's some alienation because I'm very terrible at sports because I can't fucking see anything. And right. So I would go to school and I would always be looking down at my feet. And rather than get my eyes checked, they sent me to the school counselor for like low self-esteem. And I was like, no, I just, and I didn't know I couldn't see. I mean, I thought everybody saw like a Matisse painting. And so I eventually got, you know, I got glasses, right? And they were very thick glasses. And we watched this movie, The Jerk. And just like my brother would just not stop teasing me and told me I was going to go cross-eyed because of that movie. And I was like, you know, 7 years old. Yeah. Yeah. I ended up like breaking my glasses because I just like couldn't handle the teasing. And that continued into our adult life too. And whatever it is, like he was very good at finding things to pick at me that you know were hurtful or you know, like you know, would press my buttons and generate a reaction. And you know, I didn't know it was called gray rocking at the time, but you know, I knew that my outcome, you know, through my 20s as I was trying to work things out. See, this is part of the having a narcissistic parent. Is my mom is like, well, when I moved out and married your father when I was 18, so you're getting kicked out of the house when you're 18. She said that pretty much like every day, the whole time we were growing up. And like if I mentioned this to my friend's parents or anything, she would like flip the fuck out.
Really?
You know, anything. If I mentioned anything about her parenting, she would flip the fuck out.
You're right.
Or even if I didn't, you know, that's part of one of the things I learned. You know, so basically, yeah, I moved out when I was 18 on my own. I had my own job. I'd saved up money for my pizza place, and it was like, well, here you are in this totally dysfunctional family situation with an abusive older brother and a narcissistic mother that is a gas. Like, I tell you, man, the woman has like a PhD in gaslighting. And I didn't know any of this stuff. I just get, you know, so I'm like thrown out into the world. Yeah, I'm a hard worker. Yeah. I mean, I've got a work ethic. So I've got that going for me, but I don't have really a way to be able to navigate just like basic social situations. And so when things would go awry, I'm like, hey, I'm an adult, and I would have like rages. I'd have like really terrible rages.
Right.
And that would result in some pretty bad stuff, like getting fired or, you know, getting into like a fight or something. I think like one St. Patrick's Day, there was a line long to the bathroom, and I got like really pissed off waiting for the line, and some dude in front of me was giving me shit or something, and I whipped my dick out and pissed on his leg or something. And it started a fight.
Damn, Wes.
Remember what happened, but things got a little, you know. So I would do that kind of shit in my 20s.
Yeah.
That's like what I would do. You know, I would just have these rages, and I would use alcohol a lot. I wouldn't use drugs because, you know, my father used drugs, but you know, so I kept having these outcomes where I'd have these rages, or I would just like fucking hate boner on people. And eventually somebody that had kind of like been through some help when I was 32 years old, they said, Hey, check out these Tony Robbins DVDs. I was like, okay. And I did. And like, that got into, you know, personality typing and you know, accountability and ask a better question, get a better answer, that kind of stuff. And like nuts and bolts, you know, if something's on your mind, you know, you need to let people know that stuff and how to communicate a lot better. And so that was the start of really my self-improvement. And as things have gone on, I discovered there's certain limitations to that, and having really just a really dysfunctional family situation, especially when you have like an addict parent also, which is pretty bad. That's a whole other box of worms there. But like I saw some pretty fucked up shit, really. So it was bizarre. So I needed more specialized tool sets, and that's where this great community that we have here has really turned me on to some great things. Like the Crappy Childhood Fairy is wonderful. I love her, and she talks about CPTSD, and then you talked about narcissistic abuse, and that's when I went further down the rabbit hole on my mother, because, you know, my father, I used to pin a lot of my childhood issues on my father, right? because he had a really bad meth addiction, and just like there was inconsistency, I thought, with him, and I thought
Right.
at least with her there was consistency, and that's true, there was. But I feel like I almost like didn't want to see any problems with her. And then you talked about the narcissistic abuse and that you'd experienced, and I was like, well, I feel like some of this seems really similar, and that I've experienced some of this. And so, thanks to you, Stephen, I mean, I did go down, and I was like, holy shit, you know, and it got to the point with the gray rocking, you know, I was like, I see what the pattern is here. There's the long and the short of it, where I'm going here is that my mother was basically triangulating me and my brother, getting us chewing on each other so that she wouldn't look like the bad guy. And
Yeah.
Once I gray rocked with my brother, like he was like, whoa, you're like, actually, you're listening to me. And he really opened up. And we actually kind of like started comparing notes. And I mean, we're not triangulating against mom now or anything. We're trying to heal. And so I do give, and my mother, to her credit, I set some healthy boundaries, because part of what I've learned about narcissistic mothers and sons is that they will infantilize their son, which is what she was doing. She was like infantilizing me. I think I said something she didn't like a few years ago, and she like spanked me. I'm not even kidding.
Wow. As an adult?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just like looked at her. I was like, what are you doing? So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of hallmarks and of a narcissistic mother and a son. And one of them is that. Another one is, you know, treating the son like a pet. Another one is, you know, absolutely, there could be no criticism of her parenting, or perceived criticism of her parenting, or insecurity. Like when I would go, for example, I went over to a friend's house, right? And my friends, their parents, they would prepare meals for us. And so I had it, and it was pork, and my mother is a terrible cook, terrible. And so I came home, and I was like, man, they had this, I didn't know what it was. And it turned out to be pork chops, Mom. You can make, and what I was trying to say was, pork chops don't have to taste like shit. And,
Right.
And she fucking flipped out. She's like, I don't want you going over there anymore.
Oh my.
And I was forbidden to go over there anymore. And I asked her why, and she said, well, Justin's mom's a slut. And so, you know, I told Justin, that I couldn't go over there
my
anymore.
God.
And he's like, why not? And I said, because your mom's a slut. And so then I like got it at school. Everybody thought I was an asshole because I was calling his mom a slut. And so, what was worse than that was that some of the other kids started calling his mom a slut. And so I got in trouble.
It's like, it's contagious.
Yeah. And so I got in trouble in school for it. And they called my mom, and she's like, oh, I never said that.
No accountability.
And then she said, if I did say that, you weren't supposed to say that. And then why did you say that?
Well, I mean, it was emotional reactivity, and it was a defense to her insecurities. Mm-hmm. And then she had to project something nasty out of nowhere in order to validate her protecting her fear. You know, it's all about avoiding accountability. That's what I've learned a lot about narcissistic people. And I've learned the difference between narcissistic and narcissist. You know, there's a difference. There's their behavioral pattern, and there's someone who lives as a narcissist. Listening to stories like yours and people like Tina Bojan, who came through the chat. How you doing, Tina? Good to see you. She says that she's, I'm so sorry. Having a narcissistic mother really impacted the way I parented my boys. I had I didn't realize, Wes and I were talking in the back a little bit, and it was like I didn't realize until I started really going down the rabbit hole of narcissism and what it is and how it's impacted different people, that my father had narcissistic tendencies. And so the trauma that was created in me, the fight or flight trigger mechanism that he created in me, actually does something very similar to what Wes was explaining earlier, which was, in his early 20s, you were talking about how, you got pissed off, you had to wait in a line to go to the bathroom, you pissed on somebody's leg. You start a fight with people. You have been exposed to and conditioned by a narcissistic personality to have rage, to it passes on their narcissistic rage.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've had my entire life. And until I began my healing journey, I didn't understand it.
I still struggle with it.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm just now learning it, and that's where self-control comes in, knowing yourself, thinking, how you think and how you respond and not react, comes into play. But Tina, I'm hoping to, if you're willing, I want to have you on for an interview here pretty soon. Thank you so much for being here, sweetheart. And if you guys are unaware, Wes Moody is a YouTuber. He has his own channel. There's a link pinned in the chat. There's also in the description. Please give him a follow. Great conversations over on Wes Moody's channel, covering a variety of topics. And if you can, please support his GoFundMe. He is an independent creator. He's putting a project together. He needs some help funding. So if you guys could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Or share out that link. We support each other around here.
Yes.
So when you started talking with your brother and comparing notes,
and that was part of the triangulation, is that he wasn't even open to that until. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, please continue.
So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't even open to that. And what I realized when we were comparing notes was that we both, even though we're 2 years apart, we have the same parents. I mean, I knew that we had different personalities, but both of us, we had very, very different experiences, even though we were in that same house. Very different. And I feel like maybe I wasn't respecting that before, or I didn't know to respect that, or even understand that with him, to maybe empathize with him. I really hated him. That's the way it was. I just really hated him, and that's what it is. I mean, that's all there was to it at that point. But once he was like, "Hey, you're really listening to me," I learned a lot about his journey and his experiences, which were different from mine.
And with those differences, like, how are you, like, what do you understand now, under knowing that there was a difference in how your narcissistic father treated your brother and how your mother treated you? Like, what is some of the main differences between the maternal and paternal narcissism aspect?
Well, so personality-wise, I do think my mother and I are more similar than I am to maybe my father. And I think my brother is more similar in personality maybe to my father. Or, my brother was basically a yes man with my father, and had like. So I guess I should go into some background on how their narcissism differs. So mom is a gaslighter. Like a PhD in gaslighting, and triangulates and is very intellectual about how she goes about it. She like spins your head into loops. Dad's
Right.
narcissism is needs to be around people all the time, needs new people all the time to be around him, needs these people to love him, can never be alone, has to be adored. He will tell little lies to people, promise people things to get them to show up, and just to hang out with them. And, if anybody then, if they hang out for a while and then they go back to whatever thing he promised that was really bullshit, he just did that to get them there. He would feel like he was being used and would get extremely hurt. Or if they called, if they asked for a detail on a story he was telling, or maybe he was taking some liberties, he would get really, really hurt and upset. And I would call him out on his bullshit, and I would ask questions. And that didn't go down too well with him. So he didn't particularly care for me very much because I wasn't feeding his ego. My older brother was like a yes man, and just like, worshiped my dad. My dad was like his hero. And he would go along with whatever dad said and just like ignore any of the empty promises that he was making. And so that was why those two got along. And while, my mother and I would disagree from time to time, I would understand in many cases her process. Like there was a process. There was for me an identifiable process So I felt like the consistency was a little bit more comforting with me, and being able to have expectations. And it was just chaotic with my dad because he always had to have people around. And then, he like, if somebody brought their kids over, he would just let them play with my toys. And I'm like, those are my toys. You can't, why are you promising my toys to these kids to ingratiate yourself to these friends you have? I didn't understand that. I feel like the boundaries were just amorphous and changing and unclear. And so that's why he and I didn't really get along. And he did get along with my brother.
Do you believe that your parents were aware of what they were doing when they were really? And were they aware that they were kind of shaping you and your brother against one another? Well, at least from your mother, I would suspect, because she seems like a covert narcissist in her triangulation.
Mm-hmm. They were both really young, and so I'm going to say I don't think they consciously were aware of it. I think that my mother, as a covert narcissist, I think for her it was just like, hey, this is what's in my toolbox. This is what works. This is what I'm going to use. And I don't necessarily think she thought it was being harmful or anything. I think I think there's a lot of, like most narcissists, you're focusing on self. And what's interesting is, my mom, because, my grandfather was an alcoholic, she started getting into self-help books, like Adult Children of Alcoholics and things of that nature, and started getting into those. And then it was like, oh, I'm getting better. Well, you're so lucky you don't have to worry about that, honey. Like stuff like that. Like, you didn't have those problems. And I did. And it's like, oh, I get to heal, but you don't get to heal because you don't have to heal because I was perfect. Like, what? And wow. Here's something. Oh, here's another thing that I learned about narcissistic mothers that tends to be a thing, and that I experienced is if there was something she didn't know how to or want to deal with me, she would like she would literally just like, here's a buck, and want me to read a book about how to raise a boy. Or she would read it and say, is that right? And throw a book at me. And it seemed very smug and kind of cold, and almost like she was like, this is the way a child's supposed to grow up and you're not doing it right. Or it was just really weird. And she still will do that from time to time. Anytime she shows up with like, oh, I bought it, here's something you need to know. And it'd be.
Do you think that's part of like shifting the blame? Like blaming you for not being raised correctly without her proper direction? Like, is she avoiding accountability by doing that, do you think?
I think so. I think she is. And I think she's also saying, oh, see, I've read all these books on this and I'm an authority. And so you're not, you're not behaving the way you're supposed to be behaving. So read this book so that we're both on the same page, i.e. my page.
So, I mean, I take it that both of your parents went through, some kind of abuse, some kind of trauma growing up to have developed a defense mechanism that becomes narcissism.
Yes.
Would you mind talking about that, or do you not want to?
I don't mind. No. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, those two on paper, you would think they really belonged together. So my mother's side of the family, from grandpa was from Oklahoma and grandma was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Anytime she wanted us to come to dinner, she'd be like, Jens. So that was interesting. It was interesting. It's interesting to have a lot of regional dialects in your family. I think that's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, grandpa was from Oklahoma and he drank a lot. He was a truck driver. And so he wasn't there a lot. And apparently my grandmother was, my mother describes my grandmother as a horrid shrew. And anytime she would like gaslight and go down these weird, so I'll give you an idea of the gaslighting that she did with my brother. And this also, I believe, is part of the triangulation. So this would be a specific example of the triangulation and the gaslighting that she did. So we went to the doctor. My brother had a bladder problem and wet the bed until he hit puberty, right? And that happens with some kids. That's just the reality for some kids, and it sucks, but it's not it's not totally abnormal. So we went to the doctor, and I don't know why I was in the room with the doctor, but the doctor's like, yeah, this is just a thing. This just happens. You're either gonna have to get some plastic for the mattress or get him some diapers. And she just went, no, he's not a baby and he's not gonna wet the bed. And so the doctor's like, well, there's this other solution. You can get a moisture alarm and like sew it to. So she spent the whole day sewing these little packages on his underwear for this moisture alarm. And so the day she did that, she sat down with my brother and she said, now, honey, can you promise me you're not going to wet the bed? And he's like, yeah, I promise, Mom, I'm not going to. And she said, so if this goes off, you're going to stop peeing, right? Yeah, I'm going to do that. And so what happened was she tried it for 3 nights. And all that happened was the alarm was going off and he'd be soaked in urine. So that's all that happened. And that's exactly what the doctor told her was going to happen.
Right.
And my father is just like, this is while they were still married too. My father's like, no, this happened on my side of the family too. One of my brothers wet the bed, and on my mom's side of the family, one of her sisters wet the bed. It happens sometimes. And he's like, he just has to grow out of it. But he didn't really fight for my brother. I think he was afraid of my mom, honestly. But he would kind of go along to get along and just like lie here and there to agree with her just to get her to shut up, I think.
Right.
But so that happened, and he kept waking up, and it happened, and she made him change his sheets, and she said, honey, what did you tell me? She's like, I told you. And he started crying. She says, didn't you make me a promise? And he's like, I'm sorry. And she said, so if you make a promise and you don't keep a promise, what does that mean? And he's like bawling his eyes out. And she's like, I'm sorry. And she said, you lied to me, honey. You lied. Why did you lie to me?
Oh my God.
And then she said, what? Your brother's younger than you and he hasn't wet the bed in years. You need to stop wetting the bed. And like, I think that's where a lot of his resentment towards me came from. But so that's the kind of gaslighting that I'm talking about. And anytime she would engage in that type of gaslighting, she would then apologize and say, oh, thank God I'm not some horrid shrew like your grandmother. So I think a lot of that came from her mother, because Grandpa was on the road much of the time. And it sounds like she had a pretty chaotic life too, because when Grandpa was home, she said that he'd go to the bar and like bring people back to couch surf on the house. And like they had some weird dude that was like living in their living room for like 2 weeks. And eventually they had to kick the guy out. It was just like this weird, bizarre, chaotic life they had. And so, yeah, mom's side, both mom and dad are the oldest of 4 children. On mom's side of the family, 3 girls, 1 boy. On dad's side of the family, 3 boys, 1 girl. And so that was her experience. My father's experience was, but grandma and grandpa on mom's side of the family, they genuinely loved each other. There wasn't a lot of money, but they genuinely cared for and loved one another and had a passionate relationship. Like I remember as a kid, just like grandma would be bent over the like the oven or something, and grandpa would run his finger up her ass crack or something. Like,
go grandpa.
Yeah. And she would go, ooh, Jonathan. And he would go, it was just like,
that's great.
Well, yeah, they had a passionate relationship, and that was nice to see.
Yeah.
My my dad's side of the family, financially well off, but their marriage was mutual Stockholm syndrome. So the way their living room was set up, Grandpa had a chair way on one end, and Grandma had a chair way on the other end, and they would not speak to one another. And apparently their entire marriage was like that.
Wow.
And Grandpa was also an alcoholic. But yeah, Grandpa apparently was one mean son of a bitch. Apparently my dad had gotten into a scrape with some kids. And Grandpa said, you go out there, and defend yourself and go and kick their asses. And if you get your ass kicked, that's fine. But if you don't go out there and do that, I'm going to kick your ass right now. And he basically kicked him out of the house and made him go fight those kids.
Damn.
And my dad ended up being kind of a handful. And there's some trauma that I'm not going to talk about with him because I learned about it and it's really private. But he ended up being a handful, and so they ended up like converting the garage into like an extra bedroom, and they just like put him out there. And all he would do is just get high and apparently, like have orgies and do drugs and listen to music and stuff like that. Yeah, they just would leave him alone.
Wow.
So he was the kind of kid that needed attention and craved attention. And they're like, well, we don't know what to do with you. So here you go. We're going to put you in the garage and just like, not have anything to do with you.
Just that's like reckless abandonment, just like abandoning someone, like a reckless abandonment.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, that's the backgrounds they came from. But they were both the oldest children too.
Gotcha. Thank you appreciate you sharing that, Wes. Then very, very enlightening. I want to say that Zax came through. What's going on, Zax? Thank you very much. Great channel, great people.
Hail Zax.
Please check out Zax and his wonderful lunch table over there. Abomination AJ, Flaccid Phoenix, Lady Balefire, Mags, great people. Please go check them out. Papa Cotton showed up. He says, "What's up, Baguettes? What's going on, Papa Cotton? My managing moderator for all Rogue channels. Thank you very much for being here, brother. I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you for being here." The lovely Sherry came through. What is going on, lovely Sherry? Thank you very much from the Legion of Memers. Hail the Legion. Good to see. Did I bring Zax up? Hold on.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Zax, Papa Cotton.
Thank you,
Tina, and
Shellback.
Shellback. Hail Shellback. Welcome.
There's Shellback. And he says, important question. Where's my DoorDash? I don't know, Shellback. I have no. Why are we supposed to know? I don't understand.
Well, I could deliver it, but it's going to have to be a hell of a tip. Quite a drive.
Let's see. Thanks for being here, Shellback. Greatly appreciate you guys. For anyone watching later or lurking in the background, Wes Moody has a great channel, WhateverCast. He does late night streams, talks about a variety of topics, and you'll find his channel very interesting. Please consider subscribing. It is in the description. It is pinned in the chat. Also, he has a GoFundMe. He's an independent creator. He's working on a project right now. Why don't you tell everybody about this project for a moment? I'm going to share this link again.
Sure.
And,
well,
if you guys could consider supporting it, I greatly appreciate it. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, let me get the description here that I wrote. That AI wrote and I edited. AI did a better job than I did with the description, so I was going to go with that. So it's an animated series. It's in the savage shadows of Northern California's untamed foothills, a broken man's quest for solace culminates in a brutal clash against a ruthless biker gang. So that's what it's about. So boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy fucks off to the woods to clear his head and heal, and he runs into trouble, this biker gang. And it's really, really good. It's what we're trying to do is get the first episode made so I can have what's called a pitch Bible. And so we're just doing some rudimentary. I want to get at least the first episode animated, but if I can't do that, what we're doing is doing storyboards with voice actors, folks in our community, folks out there. Shellback, I see you. who's voicing the bartender. And I'm going to try and shop that or get it made independently, whichever we can do. But it's going to be 10 to 12 episodes, and it follows this arc with the bikers. If we can get season 1 made, then I've got season 2 and season 3 in a movie outlined too. I pretty much have 6 to 7 episodes written already. So it's a fascinating tale. Yeah, he shows up at this his grandmother's trailer up in kind of a vacation spot, but it's been years since they've ever been up there, and this biker gang is there, and they're up to no good. And so he runs out of whiskey and goes to the bar and talks to the bartender, and that's how he recounts the story. And then the bartender throws him out of the bar, not realizing he interrupted something. And so the bikers don't know why the fuck this guy is there. Is he there? Is he a cop? Is he a fed? Is he, is he competition? Why the hell is this guy just showing up out of nowhere? And so the whole series is about them trying to find out who he is and why he's there, and him myopically not seeing the danger that he's in. And that eventually culminates in a confrontation that is pretty serious. I think it's a great story.
How long have you been working on this story, Wes?
Well, initially I was going to do, because my old channel, I was fearing, censorship and it getting nuked, and it did get nuked. So I was right to fear that. I was going to do a conspiracy of the week, almost like a conspiracy, almost like a Doomcock for conspiracy content. And then I was like, no, that's not good enough. I was like, this has to be good. If we're going to bypass censorship and inspire people, this needs to be good. And so I had this really crazy experience writing it. I sat down and I cleared my head, and I had what I could only describe as a religious experience. And it was like going to the eye doctor, and how they flip 1 or 2. Well, like something got flipped, and I was like, that's the story.
Beautiful. And
it just like turned into something completely different. And I think that happened in when did the Year of Hell start? I think April of last year we were on the track to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was much further along, and then the Year of Hell happened, and trying to emerge from the Year of Hell.
I understand that. I went through a couple years of hell. That's why I have this channel.
yeah, it's turning into a couple of years of hell here for me too, but I think I'm handling it okay. Well, except for the 5.5 and of whiskey over the last 24 hours. That probably wasn't good.
I mean, that helps. Guys, if you could please share out a link to his GoFundMe. Share if you can, help if you will, share if you can, support independent creators out there. And real quick before I go back to the chat, because I got a couple wonderful people, wonderful fellow narcissistic abuse survivors and thrivers in the chat. Why don't you explain to everybody a little short synopsis of what WhateverCast is? What do you do on your channel?
Well, WhateverCast is talking about whatever the heck I want to, current topics, mental health, self-help, and just live streaming whatever I want to talk about. So I wouldn't say it's super focused. I also have the conspiracy channel, which is more focused on conspiracy content. But WhateverCast is kind of what the old channel was. I don't focus so much on pop culture anymore. One of my frustrations, because I got started, in the chats of the Fandom Menace, or do your thing, man.
Says, I am author Stephen Walton, the Fandom Menace historian, born in the chats of the High Council with my brothers and sisters, fighting for our modern mythologies. Wash your hands, wash your ass, be good to each other, and suffer no fools. Peace.
There you go. So I'm one of the brothers that was in the chats with Stephen, right? And
yes, sir.
And we both made our contributions in different ways. You made the Fandom Menace Volume 1, and we're working on Volume 2. And then, we're active in the community. And I was also a part of that, mainly focusing on Star Trek, what's happened to Star Trek, because that was the one that hurt me the most. Star Wars hurt, but Star Trek really hurt.
Right there with you, man.
Yeah, and we were trying to get these studios in Hollywood to turn it around. And it got to a point with me, I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, these channels are enormously successful, these other channels that we're mentioning, that were the Fandom Menace channels. but it got to a point where it's like they're not going to change. You know, once I found out about ESG and how all that works, it's like it's dead. It's not, you know, you can't save it. I'm sorry.
You know what's also to cut you out just for a second. I'm sorry, Wes. You know what is also going down this creating this channel, becoming doing narcissist abuse awareness. I have discovered that those people in Hollywood, they're narcissists. They get off on destroying these modern myths, on attacking the fans, on doing what they do. So I was talking about this on a live stream the other day. It's a weird symbiotic relationship that was created between the menace or the indie sphere now and Hollywood, because we were feeding them negative fuel the whole time.
Yep.
The whole time we were complaining, heartbreaking, criticizing, we were just feeding them all the negative supply they could ever want.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was useful at first. I think it was useful even like through 2021. I want to say that for me, the break where I just didn't feel like I could really contribute to that effort, or that effort was worth contributing to, really was the split between Doomcock and, you know, the other guy, Larry. Once that happened, I was just like, this thing's over. And I thought, and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of been beating the drum earlier. I was kind of suggesting, because I was a big fan and a financial contributor. I mean, not as big as, and, you know, contributing much money in super chats. And I was like, hey, we need to support and promote independent content creators and make our own shit. Like, you guys have the platform. Hollywood clearly has lost the plot. We're never getting these back. You know, even if you have the best Star Wars movie in the world, you're never going to create the emotions and the freshness and the newness that you did with the original Star Wars, because there already is an original Star Wars. The only way you can do that is by creating something new. And so, yeah, well, apparently grifters are going to grift, and you don't make money that way. Oh, wait, did I say that? Sorry.
Yeah, don't tell the truth. We don't.
Yeah, so, yeah, no, we don't make money that way, but we will promote independent content creators if it's Eric July, who doesn't fucking need us anyway, but we can parasite off of that guy. I'm getting mad, sorry. Anyway, yeah, they're great. Yeah, those channels are great. They're wonderful people. They're wonderful people.
Wes going rogue real quick.
They support independent content creators that are of the Eric July model, that have already achieved their own success, and they will kiss ass and parasite off of that guy. But fuck you if you're a little guy and want to make your own shit and financially contribute to them. So there you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Well said, sir.
Those are my thoughts on it.
Yes,
they're growing, they're growing, and they're doing fantastic. So good for them. You get your grift on, man.
You know what? I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but what really gets me is, you know, the obvious toxic behavior that happens at the top of some of these comicscape organizations. That, you know, you have a community of people who are built on, I'm fighting against people being smeared, people being stalked, people being harassed, mislabeled, and yet they will happily get on a stream with the same people that do the very same thing in our own sphere and promote a book or be buddy and get some subs for their channel. That's just, it's not something that I'm directly bringing awareness to, and as far as like what this channel does, but I mean, I think it's relative to toxic behaviors, narcissism, psychopaths, sociopaths, or behavior, you know, sociopathy, within certain circles. That you're right. You know, it's one of the unfortunate things that I've learned, Wes, is that you know, having no morals or having, you know, poor ethics will get you ahead. It will get you ahead. If you don't care that someone is getting walked on, smeared, devalued, stabbed, then you can work with entire clusters of toxic people who will help promote you, help cover up your lies, while devaluing others under the banner of we're fighting a toxic industry. That's what gets me.
I'm getting mad again. Yeah, that whole Doomcock thing that happened. I mean, you know, and it had been like there were hints that things were coming a few weeks before that happened. But I mean, I'm just right. So it's like, he's like, well, I don't do, that's why I don't do rumors anymore. Yeah, we're punk rock, but we're also highbrow and we don't do rumors because we're too good for that. And brought it on, just like, he didn't have as many subs as they did, or wasn't as growing as fast as they were combined or whatever. So it's like, fuck this guy. We're going to jettison him. What assholes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, as we know, both of us who have had our own experiences and, had to understand ourselves better and why we developed the way that we did because of toxic personality types. We can see that, and understand that there is a certain type of toxic behavior, toxic people who will always protect their narrative over what would be considered right or decent. What is decent to another person? And I've seen a lot of that. It's one of the things that it's not the major factor, but it was one of the things that kind of stopped me from completing volume 2.
You're getting me mad again. I got to chime in.
Yeah, no, we're gonna change directions. I promise.
Wait. Let me just. You're getting me mad again with this Doomcock thing, and then like all of them on that fucking Friday night farts show are just like, we don't understand why Doomcock's mad. All we did was say that his show sucks and he gives inaccurate information, and that he's not as popular as we are. We don't know why he's mad. Fuck you.
Yeah.
We can't. Yeah, it's like, why is he mad? There's something wrong with him. Assholes. Oh, God. Fuck those.
Well, it's all about the hive mind. It's very strange that, Phantom Menace and everything that came after it, we were talking about fighting against the far left hive mind. And then we saw the formation of that same kind of cult of personality develop.
But it did.
Yeah, it did. But real quick, while you're on the mention of DC, Lord Doomcock has a chapter in the upcoming book, The Phantom Menace Volume 2. And I was actually going to wait to make an announcement on this weekend, but, there's some people in the audience that follow that. Volume 2 has become a testimony of various people who were around during the formation of the Phantom Menace. And Volume 3 is going to be the same. It's going to be the same thing. As a thank you to all of the people who have had to wait for Volume 2 for this long, I am going to be doing Volume 2, shipping it out to them. I'm going to be keeping their information, and I'm going to ship them Volume 3 for free. So I'm going to be doing that next year. I'm going to be setting up some more interviews. Wes, I'd like to interview you for Volume 3 if I could.
Sure.
And also, Zach's, I'd like to interview you in the audience. So this is that. I know you guys have had to wait a long time. I apologize. I was sticking my dick in crazy. I went through a lot of narcissistic abuse and I had to create a 5,000 sub channel to get back on my feet. But I am now currently working on that. And I've got some great people that are going to help me edit it. Mortal Coil, Tina's offered, Slender Dad's offered, and I'm going to be using every resource to help edit this book. But Volume 2 will be coming out hopefully before the end of this year, and Volume 3 should be out about, I'd say, 4 months after that, 4 or 5 months after that. And every person who backed Volume 2 will get a free copy of Volume 3. So I want to go into the chat real quick. Oh, guys, please, and if you can, subscribe to Wes Moody. Great channel. And please share out the GoFundMe. Give if you can, share if you will, support your independent creators out there. Wes has been working on this project for a while. Show him some support. I greatly thank you. In the chat, we've got Nikki Red, who has been one of my subs for as long as I can remember. Hail to you, Nikki. She says we suffer no fools, and that's right. Because after you go through narcissistic abuse, after you learn about yourself, go through your healing journey, understand what you dealt with, understand what it was in you that made you, as far as in our relationship, what made you susceptible to that manipulation, or if you're someone like Wes or Tina or any of the other wonderful, beautiful people in this community who have had to go through healing journeys due to narcissistic parenting, when you discover who you are, when you are going through that healing, you understand who toxic people are, why they do what they do, how to deflect, how to get away, how to respond or not respond, go no contact, gray rock, and get away from them fools. You fool me once, shame on you. Will fool me twice, shame on me. We're never going to be fooled again. Nikki, thank you so much for supporting my channel, for all of the comments. I greatly appreciate it. It's because of people like you that I have kept going. And quite frankly, the type of abuse that I suffered made me suicidal. And it has been people like you who got me out of that that dark mindset. People like you, people like Angelus Draven, people like Eat Sepulchre and Sporky News Podcast, Culture Casino, Wes Moody, so many names and so many wonderful people in the chats that have helped me in my recovery and healing. It's people like another great subscriber, Ruth Bedford, channel member. Thank you so much for being here, sweetheart. I greatly appreciate you. I know I haven't answered that member's question you asked me last night. I will get to that. I want to give it the attention that it deserves, but I appreciate you. And I hope you like that video. I'm going to be doing, from a spiritual perspective, what going through a narcissistic relationship or going through narcissistic abuse does to you on that level. There's a lot of people out there that do content on the mental and emotional recovery. There are some that talk about the spiritual aspect, but that's something I'm going to lean heavy into because that's just a great part of who I am and my expression and my life's journey. So thank you very much for everything that you've done, Ruth, and hail to all my brothers and sisters across the pond. And real quick, I just want to mention that Zach said Wes is based, which I think Wes would take as a compliment.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a great compliment.
And Deborah Carroll's in the chat. Thank you so much, channel subscriber. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. We are speaking with Wes Moody of WhateverCast. I know he only has so much time left, so I want to get back to talk with him. He is a son of narcissistic parents. He is sharing his experiences, his understanding, and self-exploration. And thank you so much, Carol, for being here. I greatly appreciate you. Every single one of my great subscribers out there, and whether it's my channel, whether it's my content, or it's someone else's, because there's some great narcissistic abuse coaches out there. Healing Out Loud, I recommend him. Lisa Girl Power, I recommend her. There's just so many good people out there getting the awareness out, being there for us during our healing journeys. And Healing Out Loud, Lisa, they've been there for me the entire time. So Wes, for people who may be going through, realizing they've had narcissistic parents or the damage that's been done to them, can you tell a little bit about your healing journey and how you've come as far as you have?
Well, I think the main thing is that I just, the start of it is that when you grow up, your experience is your experience and you don't know any different. So you don't know that's abnormal. Like when you encounter people that are normal, which occasionally will happen, and you see like good people, they're communicating well, they get along, they love each other. They don't stay upset at each other. They engage in like group activities, go on vacations, like they're open with everybody. That's one of the things that was kind of a red flag, that made me start thinking something was wrong, was just how like my mother tried to shelter us and not have us talk to anybody else. She's like, oh, I don't want you to, people might think I'm a bad mother, I was like, why would people think you're a bad mother? I don't, I asked the question in my head, but I never asked it like out loud. Like before Thanksgiving, she'd be like, don't say anything that'll make me look like a bad mother, And so, I'm just like thinking back over the years, and I mean, after my parents got divorced, especially, right? We would go to Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I would just sit there with my arms folded and I wouldn't say a fucking thing. Because I would be chastised for any little thing that I said. Not at the dinner, but after the dinner. For example, I'll give you an example, right? So I told you the story about how my mom basically forbid me from going over to my friend's house, and I didn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So I would like watch TV or I'd play a lot of video games. And one of the things I would do is I'd like flip through the TV guide or whatever, and there would be a discussion of, what shows the adults liked or whatever. And I'd be able to rattle off what channel and what station they were on. And when we got home, she's like, you don't do that. That makes me look like a bad mother. It makes it look like you're watching too much TV. And I was like, I am watching too much TV because you chased all my friends off. Like, that's what I'm doing. You're using the TV as a babysitter. That's what's happening. So if that's a problem, like, why is it on me to not make you look like a bad mother? It is kind of like what was happening in my head, but I would not like ask anybody else because
right.
like that was the boundary. That was the red line. You do not cross the red line. You don't talk to people about what's happening in this house because it might make me look like a bad mother. And you love your mom, don't you? You don't want people to think your mom's a bad mother. Like, that's the kind of gaslighting we're talking about here.
I mean, like what damage does that do to a child? How did that affect you in your development?
Again, it's like in my adulthood, I didn't, because I felt like I was so suppressed on what I could talk to and who I could talk to and stuff like that. And by the way, she let my older brother do whatever the hell he wanted to. And I would get his lectures. I would get his pre-lectures. I would get pre-lectured, and then I would get lectured. And because of the triangulation, my brother thought, well, he was also using meth, but because of the triangulation, he thought that we were like conspiring against him and talking crap about him or something.
Wow.
And that, I was part of the conspiracy, and that was part of his, I guess, his resentment of me. I learned all this stuff once we started communicating, and
right.
we started listening to each other. And I was like, no, I was being told, like, I was getting your lecture, my lecture, and then also I'd get like the gaslighting. The gaslighting would come on, and so I should be out there having fun. I'm like looking out the window. It's a beautiful day, and she would go on these tirades about like how women were totally fucked, and she would like, I'll give you an example of something, how she like would guilt and gaslight me. So she would get into something. She would say, oh, well, your dad and I, we wanted to have one boy and one girl. I ended up with two boys. Ha ha. I blame your father. I was supposed to name you if you were a girl, but you ended up being a boy. So I didn't get to name either of you because you ended up being a boy.
So she was subtly attacking your masculinity.
Yeah. And then she's like, it sure would have been nice to have, it would have been so nice to have a daughter to be able to go shopping with and talk to boys about. And, she'd go into like how nice it would have been to have a daughter. And then she's like, but I got a boy, best boy in the world, but I wanted a girl. It's like, that's the kind of shit she would do that my brother thought that we were conspiring against him, that I had to listen to, and so that's like a hallmark of a narcissistic mother, is sometimes the gender of the child. But that doesn't, but believe it or not, that didn't really hurt me, because I knew that was bullshit. Because on mom's side of the family, she had like 6 nieces. And if she had an itch to scratch as far as like wanting to have that female bonding with a child, she could have been the cool aunt. But here's where the narcissism shows up, because narcissistic mothers with other women, they hate other women. Like here's another example of the gaslighting. Okay, so women
like
are
my ex.
yeah. So right. Oh, woe is me. Women get screwed. Women didn't get the right to vote until 1920. Oh, this is terrible. I have to do your dad's work and my work and raise you. Women are getting screwed, and respect women, honey. And then, we would drive somewhere, and some lady pulled in front of her in the car, and she says, watch it, you fucking cunt. Oh no, honey, you never call a woman a cunt. Only I can do that because I'm a woman. Like,
rules for thee. Right. Yeah.
It was just like weird. Oh, thank God I'm not some horrid shrew like your grandma, And so she would just like gaslight. And again, I want to give credit where credit's due. She I set some boundaries, and she is improving. She's getting better. And our relationship is much improved today after setting those boundaries. But for my childhood, that was what it was like. And then, I mean, just that again, you putting me down the narcissistic path, exploring that part of the trauma, like it didn't even really occur to me to do a deep dive on her. And the stuff I was reading, I was like, holy shit, this is mom. There was, other threatened by other women, getting upset but we had a neighbor across the street, and she would do respect women, and women are getting the shaft, and, treat women, women deserve respect just as much as a man does. All this shit, gaslight me, woman across the street. That Chantal's a bitch. You don't talk to her. You're like, whoa, okay. Or I'd have a teacher that I really liked, and the teacher really liked me. And and so I have this math teacher, right? She was terminal cancer. And the teacher really liked me, but she was a terrible math teacher. But she really liked me, and she's like, she called my mom, and she's like, oh, I really love your, I told my mom about her cancer. My mom wrote her a letter, and the teacher talked about the letter for the entire week, and I looked like such a bitch. I mean,
wow.
And so,
oh my God,
I was like, what? Did you write my teacher a letter? And she's like, I did. And I was like, why didn't you tell me about it? It was none of my business. It was between me and another woman. We were, and I was like, huh? And so
that's
the teacher
insidious.
so the teacher and I looked like a total pussy because of that.
Right.
Because this teacher would gush about the letter all the time. And so, the teacher, wanting to thank her, told her how, what a great kid I was and all this stuff. But, he seems tired. Is there something going on at home? Some sort of abuse? Oh boy, did she change her tune on that teacher when that happened. That bitch needs to mind her business.
Wow.
And then she looked at me, she said, there's nothing going on at home, is there? It's like, why is she telling me this stuff? That bitch needs to mind her own business. I was like, whoa, first you humiliated me with the letter. And now, and then she like got upset at them and complained to the school. And so, right. And they're trying to schedule a meeting with her to figure out what the problem is. And I'm walking by the teacher's lounge, and it was those old schools from the 60s that have the windows that the square rectangular windows that fold out.
Yeah.
And so I could hear everything they were saying. They're like, oh, there's Wes Moody. And they're like, what's wrong with his mom? And the teacher's like, maybe she's a pill popper. And they're like debating whether she's an alcoholic, a pill popper, or crazy.
Wow.
And I got treated like shit by all the teachers after that because they couldn't figure it out.
It spreads. See, that devaluation, the lies, the smearing, the gaslighting, all of that. And that's the intent, it's just to spread pain. And that's what happened to you in that situation.
Yeah. But it was none of my business that she wrote the letter to the teacher. It's just like, what does it have to do with you? Fuck. Well, why are you even questioning me on it? Women are getting the shaft. I can't write a letter to another woman. What the hell? Like that was the attitude. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff. Where were we going with this? My journey. So the healing journey.
Just real quick before we move on. I'm sorry, Wes. Excuse me. I just want to say hi to Janet from Another Planet who came through. Janet. She said, I don't know, Wes streams anytime during the day. And I said, yeah, I got him early today.
Got time today.
Ruth says gaslighting is the worst. Absolutely it is. Tina Bojan says, every speech from my mother would begin with, well, your father never did anything to raise you. Just devaluing dad. Just that's hideous. And something that I was actually thinking Shellback brought up when I was talking about like how she was subtly emasculating you was, thankfully Wes was born when he was. He would have been if he'd been a new generation, he might have gotten put on puberty blockers. Just real quick. Do you think that is part of why there are so many parents that are forcing these transitions on their children? Is their own illnesses, their own unresolved issues? They're passing that on to their kids.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So do I, brother.
I think the boomers are a very narcissistic generation. And that's who raised me. I don't know if your parents are boomers or not, or if they're older than that.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was, he admitted, he said he missed the hippie generation. So he was a part of what he called the freak generation. A lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, drug culture, and love bombed evaluation. Like that was my entire childhood was, I love you, son. I love you, son. I love you. You're going to be a better version of me. And then you're a stupid N-word and beat the crap out of me. That was like the cycle that I went through, which is, we were talking earlier before the show. It's when I realized that now that I've gone through what I've gone through, understand myself more, that I look for women who treat me that way. I look for relationships who are going to love me one moment and then do the worst they can the next. And, that's a part of the healing journey, guys, and going through it. Before we go into Wes's healing journey, I just want to say hello to Angel. What is up, Angel? Good person. Been talking to me both in private and in public. Another narcissistic abuse survivor, thriver, coming through the world, very based, wonderful woman. Thank you, Angel, for all the support that you've given me. And I greatly appreciate you, sweetheart. You've been a wonderful addition to this community and helped to build it. Thank you. So, Wes, tell us about your healing journey and how far you've come from dealing with the narcissistic abuse that you suffered as being raised by narcissistic parents.
Well, it's gone a long way. I mean, so I went from being like this lost, confused, really angry person to kind of being a more calm, centered, present in the moment, like not numbing myself out either like by, trying to avoid people or daydreaming or whatever. Being a little bit more empathetic, if that makes any sense. I feel like
absolutely.
And that was not what I was expecting. I was like, oh, okay, well, I see why you are the way you are. But yeah, I mean, the trigger was really, I mean, they talk about for addicts hitting a rock bottom. Well, I mean, I'd hit a point where like this pattern kept repeating and I knew it was bad, but I didn't know what was causing it. And so but I didn't know what the solution was. Cause I mean, how many people, unless you've been through it, if you come from like a normie family, you have got no fucking clue about this stuff. You just think the guy, you just think somebody's like a psycho or a hothead or, something, screw loose that you don't know, or weird, whatever it is. And so it took somebody that had been through that situation and come through the other side to again, give me the Tony Robbins, get the ultimate edge. It had get the edge and personal power. I like personal power better than get the edge. But yeah, it was like nuts and bolts stuff. You start, a lot of it is, resolving internal conflicts, right? And that's the source of a lot of your pain is, like one of those has to win. I want to, have growth and connection, but I don't want to get hurt. So you have to resolve one of those, you have to risk getting hurt or be okay with being hurt, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So you go through that. And then a lot of it is, the gray rock, I think kind of started there. Because, and a lot of that was looking at kind of not just my own engagement in arguing with, say, my brother or, some other family. It was weird. Our communication in our family was like, no communication, no communication, no communication, boom. And then no communication, no communication, no communication, boom. Like that was the cycle.
Wow. That's a lot of explosive behavior.
Yeah. Tired of arguing. Like, so the gray rock is great because a narcissist is going to need that conflict. They're going to need that argument and it makes them feel good to get a rise out of you. And so if you don't give them that, then you can get to the underlying issue as to why they're getting the rise out of you. And, that helped a lot with my brother and the genesis of going, figuring out what, now what I know to be gray rock started with the Tony Robbins. And I just really recently learned the term for it. But how it manifests as far as relationships in my adult life, that's another rabbit hole I've kind of gone down. And like how I approached it before I got any help at all was I'd be like, I don't know how to do this. And in my head, I'd be like, I don't know how to do this. You fucking handle relationshiping, like it's on you to do it. I don't know how to do it. You do it is what's in my head. Like you're supposed to know how to do that. Right. I don't know how to do it. And how that comes off as being like aloof or disinterested or uncaring. And that's not what it is. It's in my head. And what I later learned is there are different attachment styles: healthy attachment, fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, and anxious attachment. And so I'm a dismissive avoidant is what I am. And us dismissive avoidance, we rarely talk. So this is probably going to be a real treat. You should probably put this in the meta tags. So this is probably going to be really elucidating for some people out there because dismissive avoidance tend not to talk about this stuff. But yeah, that's my attachment style. And so what I learned is like some of the stuff that it was hard for me to see the pain that I would cause because I just didn't know how to be like emotionally available. You know, I
Right.
didn't know how to do that. And so what would end up happening is, you know, I would get cheated on. And once I got cheated on the first time that ever happened, I was like, oh, fuck. I mean, it's inevitable that I'm going to get cheated on. So I need to cheat first. And it just turned into me really not being good in relationships at all, really being kind of a pig, quite honestly. Where it's like, oh, okay, I got it out of the way. Fuck. What if I better do it twice just so that I'm ahead, right? Like it's a point system or some shit.
Right.
I'm like, fuck, I got 2 in. Well, I want to be 10 points ahead. Yeah, fuck.
Yeah.
This is some really fucked up shit right now, and I'm kind of somewhat embarrassed talking about it, but I feel that someone out there can relate to it.
I greatly appreciate it, Wes. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely, yeah. So the dismissive avoidant, other things. So the dismissive avoidant is kind of like, you know, you run into a brick wall with the dismissive avoidant is what happens. If you're not the dismissive avoidant, if you're the other partner. So that's what happens. You run into a brick wall with them. They're like, this is as far as you're getting. And so maybe for me, the wall used to be here, but now the wall might be here. I still have a wall. But it's not as far out. It's not like a moat with a drawbridge like it used to be. So I've learned how to do that on the healing journey. Something that happens with okay.
Oh, is it? Does that make it easier for you to let people in?
Oh,
to your
it does.
comfort zone?
It does. I'm still like not great at relationships. I think another hallmark of the dismissive avoidant that I've learned that is a behavior that I engage in is that a lot of times, communication wise, we'll feel like we're getting beat up or we don't handle criticism well. And it'll just be like, you know, what your partner's trying to tell you is, you know, I want to communicate with you and I want the relationship to get better. And you might hear criticism. And what a dismissive avoidant will do is just like fuck off out of the relationship.
Right.
Like, you know, oh, you're not happy. I don't want you to be unhappy. And I don't know how to fix whatever it is that you're interested in fixing here. So, you know, I'll just like block you and never talk to you again.
I mean, obviously that came from your upbringing. Do you think that is in part you not being able to rely on, trust your mother figure and what she taught you, and as far as how she acts with avoiding, holding yourself accountable or confronting issues?
I'm very sensitive to what I perceive to be emotional manipulation. And when I feel like I'm being criticized, I feel like that's what's coming on. And if it's not direct,
right,
I need short and sweet. I need direct. If I don't get it directly and I get beating around the bush, and this is one of my triggers for everything, not just relationships. But if I feel like people are beating around the bush or trying to break news to me gently, I kind of feel like they're being disingenuous or pretentious, and that triggers me and puts me in a rage, or it makes me shut down.
Yeah,
and so like I'll give an example. I was asked to do something in a relationship, and it was like, if you don't do this, then you may not see me again. And I was like, block. I was like, oh, well, you're just trying to emotionally manipulate me, so fuck you, bye.
That is insane, Wes. As I have been going through this journey over the last year, I did a lot of that. I mean, I talked a lot in my my earlier videos about, you feel isolated by the narcissist because of the smear campaigns and because of the gaslighting. So you have to isolate yourself even further to find your true self. And I've done that to several people that I'm now talking to again. Like, I just cut them out. Okay, so they didn't even particularly have to do anything wrong. It was just I can't take the chance that you are someone who is manipulating me, so I have to block you or I have to cut you out. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's been a part of my healing process, has been acting in that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for you, you need to do that because that's setting boundaries. For me, that might be too much boundary. Maybe I need, now I can see that that's an invitation to a conversation, and I can navigate that in a way that I couldn't before. I didn't have the tools and the skills to be able to even know that that's what was going on. Now I do, but that's, it's work in progress, and you have to be comfortable with yourself. And I just don't feel like I'm relationship material at the moment, unless I really get my socks blown off. I'm just not.
Right there with you, brother. That's right there with you. Yeah.
And I probably am still, I still like in the back of my head have, I need to do that before that happens. Which is very uncool. Very uncool. I mean, it's kind of nice because you feel like you got away with something, but then you feel a tremendous amount of guilt afterwards.
Yeah. How has since the communication with your brother improved, how has that helped with your healing, and has it helped with his?
It has helped in both cases. We are, see, my brother's one of those people that's a really indirect communicator too, which it makes him difficult to deal with sometimes. Both him and my father are. My mother, she's a different kind of indirect. She can be direct. But no, for me and him, it's improved a great deal. It kind of reframes my childhood in a different context. So maybe it doesn't seem as victim-y as it did before, or it didn't just happen to me, or, understanding and respecting that he had a very different journey. We were in the same house. He had a very different experience, a very different journey, and respecting that.
That is, I mean, to hear that, and I understand it. And it seems like you said your brother's more like your father, you're more like mom.
Well,
but your brother was the golden child.
I don't think we had a golden child. My brother dropped out of high school. Yeah. So my brother would be, hold on, let me look up I was definitely the lost child or the scapegoat for sure. But he would be, hold on. I need to look them up. God.
Well, the way that I meant the golden child thing is I know that like a narcissistic parent will have one. It just seems like, your father and your brother had a connection, and then you and your mother had this connection. It was a toxic one, but it seems like you said that like your brother was more like your dad. So your mom would not preface him because she acted in the way that your father would, in that relationship. I guess it was a bit of capitulation, or he was, I don't want to say weaker of the two, but the way that his condition manifested, mom was overbearing. And then whereas you were the one who took, you probably, I would imagine, were a bit of a stronger personality as a kid, so she had to beat you down. Whereas your brother would just capitulate. So he was the good one to her. Well, that's just like from what I'm hearing. If I'm right or wrong, please let me know. How did your dad treat you?
My dad, I was a very quiet kid, and my dad was one of those people that when people were around, you just had to talk to them. Or if he was telling a story and people had to laugh, people would have to laugh. And I still don't laugh a lot as an adult, and I definitely didn't laugh as a child. So he would tell one of his jokes or spin one of his yarns, and I'd just be like, pretty funny. And he would think I was like mocking or insulting him. And it's just like, I feel like we just didn't like get each other, we didn't get each other.
Gotcha.
And so he just, I think he thought that I was being like judgy. I think he thought I was like a little boy version of my mother or something.
Right.
And that I was just like riding his ass and getting down on him for every little thing and nitpicking, which I was not. I'd ask questions. I just wanted to know what was going on. And much of that had to do with the fact that I couldn't fucking see. And he interpreted that to me to be me challenging him for some reason.
Sorry. It goes along like what I've learned through my experiences is like narcissists create problems for which there is no solution so that you can have perpetual negativity. And it's like, it seems like the whole the site situation with you, just like the wed betting situation with your brother. It's like that's the case. You know, it's just, we're not going to solve this issue. We're going to leave it as a problem and then blame the person, the victim, for the issue that's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes along with what I've experienced when I went through what I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's some other things that I kind of look back on and see it in a totally different light, in a totally different context. And again, mom had control over much of the narrative, if you will. And yeah, my dad did get fucked up on drugs, and after they got divorced and did some crazy shit and some very damaging things that damaged me psychologically. But, you know, the narrative was like, your dad got hooked on drugs, so I had to leave him. Right. That's the narrative.
It was all about her.
Yeah. And so when I look back, you know, my grandma, my dad's mother, you know, she was like, oh, your mother just never, she wouldn't cut him a break. It's not about till, you know, it's not about till perfection. It's about till death do us part. I'd like to give Rapunzel a piece of my mind. You know, she thought that she was just like constantly nagging and ragging on my dad. And I, you know, as a kid, I didn't know what was going on. But now that I look back on it, it kind of seems like that's what was going on. She was nagging and nitpicking and just like nothing was ever good enough for her. And once he would meet one of her conditions, she would set down a new condition and would move the goalposts on him and gaslight him. You know,
yeah.
When, I mean, they were very young, but my dad's family was pretty well off, right? And so my great grandma's old, you know, 1890s craftsman style house, she was going to let my dad and mom buy that. And, you know, they got married at 18 and 19. Like they were buying the house and she was living in the apartment in back. And this was like the first experience I had with my mom and her narcissism, because, you know, we used to always hang out with my great grandma. She would play Uno. She would take us to church. And then like she gave us a haircut, you know, instead of the 70s bowl haircut, she gave us like a 1950s haircut without asking my mom. And my mom basically like cut us off and didn't let us see her anymore, even though we were like living in her house.
Wow.
They were buying from her. And so then my mom, I guess, in a bid to be more independent, you know, wanted to earn her own money and buy a different house somewhere else away from grandma. And so she started babysitting, and everybody said, don't babysit. It's a bad idea. You know, if something happens to those kids, it's going to be bad. Well, something did happen. Our dog bit one of the kids. My dad's dog bit one of the kids. And so rather than her accepting responsibility and saying, you guys were right about the, you know, babysitting, and my grandma got sued, my mom and dad got sued. It was like a big mess.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. She blamed my dad. She's like, it's your dog that bit that kid. And like, and so we were forbidden from having we never had a dog ever after that, ever again.
Wow.
And it was like, well, you can't have a dog, honey, because you're not responsible enough. It's like, huh? Like we couldn't have a dog because we weren't responsible enough when it was her watch. And that's when the dog bit.
Yeah.
And so they moved into this not so nice house, this little shack, really. I think in a last ditch effort to save their marriage. And I think, you know, dad started using drugs as a coping mechanism with her psychopathy. And that's what happened.
That is an incredible story, man. Thank you for sharing everything you have today, Wes. I know I've kept you about 24 minutes too long.
Oh, what? I was kind of into it. No, I feel that I think this was good. Yeah.
Would you like to come back and do another one of these at some point in the future?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe we can do a group thing. That might be fun.
Yeah, we'll do a group thing. Yeah. No, yeah. We'll definitely. I can do a few more interviews, and then we'll get a panel together, and we'll do some discussion. That'd be a great idea. Before we head out, I want to say thank you very much to people in the chat that came in later on. What's up, disenchanted persons? Narcissists change you forever. Your world will never be the same, and that's the truth. I know you went through a narcissistic relationship, just like me. And what I've discovered, my friend, is that when you come out the other end, as you start really healing, you understand yourself more. You become a stronger version of yourself. And I'm really pushing that on my channel and in my content, is get to know yourself better. What was it in you? What did you go through in childhood? What did you face? What personality traits do you have that make you susceptible to someone who continues to hurt you, but you yearn for that pain? What were your boundaries not strong? Do they not, were you, what is it in you that you needed to become a better version of yourself? And that's one of the directions I want to take this channel in. And Angel says, if it'll come up, there it is. Yes, but you can be better. Absolutely, sweetheart. That's one of our cheerleaders out there, Angel Bulldog. Victoria, named after victory itself, thriving out there after a narcissistic abuse, narcissistic parent. Thank you so much, sweetheart, for being here. Shellback, thank you so much, man, for all the interaction today. Shellback, love you, brother. OGTFM chat brethren. He says, in a way, I understand blocking people, isolating yourself, but if you're isolated, communication doesn't happen, and communication needs to happen to solve problems. Absolutely. And
absolutely,
yes,
right.
The term group thing was used, Shellback. Yes, that was used. Another great person in this chat before we close out, Tim. If you get a chance, go back and take a look at this. Tim has also, and I'm not sure how much he wants to share, but he has dealt with narcissistic relationship in his past, and it's actually just before he came to this community. So another person, another thriver in this community, doing well for himself, pushing past the pain, pushing past the trauma, and living a better life for himself. Guys, please subscribe to Tim's Talk. Support this young, I want to say young man, because Wes, I thought Tim was like 25. He's in his 30s. I'm not going to say how old he is, but he's in his 30s. That's what happens when you take your vitamins and say your prayers. When you listen to Hulk Hogan, 80s Hogan. That's
God damn, man. You mean my 5.5 of whiskey a day probably isn't going to be good?
No, Tim, I think Tim battled his trauma with weights and vitamins, which was probably the healthiest way to go. So good for you, man.
Try that. Yeah.
So let's see. In closing, Wes, to a person who has gone through a similar experience as you have in your life, who may need to hear some words of wisdom or encouragement, what would you pass on to another child, another adult who has, gone through your similar life experience? What would you tell them?
Well, you're not crazy. You're normal given the circumstances under which you had grown up. They call it the abnormal normal. Now, whatever happens, you're never going to be able to fix the past, so you shouldn't live in the past. What we're talking about now is healing and getting aligned, aligning yourself spiritually, mentally, and physically, and getting better and healing and going on the healing journey. And once you go on the healing journey, life just gets a lot better. I mean, I can't even tell you some of the stuff that I've had that I just never thought was possible. Like I used to have panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and especially social anxiety and like gatherings, and I'd have some of my peers in my 20s invite me to like a club or whatever, and I would just like have a panic attack. I thought they were setting me up for failure or something, but that was just something I had to kind of work through. And because of the social interaction and not knowing how to do that in a lot of cases. And so, yeah, you can heal and you will be better. Life will be better and you'll enjoy life. And if your tribe, your family is toxic, come join our family. Join people on a healing journey and we'll heal together. So that's my message to them.
That's beautiful, dude. Thank you so much. Guys, if you are watching this later, you've been around here the whole time, thank you so very much. If you're just joining us, thank you for coming. Please go back and watch this wonderful interview, enlightening interview. And please subscribe to WhateverCast if you have not. And if you could, share out a link to his GoFundMe. He is raising funds. Oops. I'm still getting used to this laptop. He's raising funds for an independent project, and we support independent creators out here. So give if you can and share if you will on your social media and support Wes Moody. I'll eventually get it. There it is. And support Wes Moody's project. Just one share can mean the difference for an independent creator. Just moving on to the next step, or getting the funding that they need, or even just the inspiration. It's very difficult for people who aren't a part of the industry to keep that motivation. And so every time you share out a link to a project, it really does mean the world to a person who is trying to build something. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you. And please make sure, as Wes said, if you're on your healing journey, if you've had a toxic upbringing, if you have gone through a toxic relationship or a narcissistic relationship, join our family. Well, it doesn't matter. It's my channel. If you don't mind, my particular brand of narcissistic abuse awareness may not be your thing, but I guarantee you there's people out there who will resonate with you and be there for you. Life coaches, narcissistic abuse coaches, and talk to somebody. Make sure, don't close yourself off completely, guys. It's one of the things that communicating between people, even though you have been hurt by someone who you lent on for love, that you believed in and trusted, don't give up on your heart, because that's what the narcissist wants. They want you to be as dark and dreary and miserable as they are. They want to pass on their pain. Don't do it. Stop it dead in its tracks. Believe in yourself. Better yourself. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Yet suffer no fools.